Hello everybody and welcome to a craft tutorial by the Flagstaff City, Coconino County Public Library. Today we're going to be making paper roses. They're going to look something like this. Very beautiful. Very complicated looking, but actually super easy. So if you have the kit from the library itself, you should have enough for 2 roses. Each rose takes 3 sheets of paper. The kit comes with enough to make a red rose and a book page rose, but you can really use any paper you want as long as it's not too thick or too thin. Just make sure that all 3 sheets are the same size starting out. Alright, so you will also need a pair of scissors, a glue stick, either a glue gun or like Elmer's or liquid glue, and then also you're going to want a skinny stick. I'm going to be using a plastic yarn needle. You could use a toothpick. You don't really want to use a pencil because it's a little bit too thick. We're going to be using this to curl the petals, and if you use a pencil, you won't get a nice tight curl. So you want something very skinny. But for now, we are just going to have our scissors and our paper. Now, if you're using origami paper, you can skip this step. But if you're using any paper that isn't square, step 1 is make your paper a square. The way to do that is you basically take your short edge, fold it diagonally over toward one of the long edges and line it up. You will end up with a triangle and a rectangle. And you can just chop the rectangle off and recycle it. Okay, and if you unfold it, that triangle becomes a square. So do that for the next couple. I'm going to use the top. Doesn't really matter what you do with the book pages. It's going to look pretty regardless. Again, just right where the edge is, you can chop. And it should go without saying, anytime in this tutorial that you feel like skipping ahead or pausing, feel free. Because the first several steps of the rose are literally just doing the same thing 3 times. So we have our 3 squares. Now we are going to fold each of them 3 times. We luckily have the first fold because of our square making. So we fold it once in half diagonally. Then fold it so this tip touches this tip. That's our second fold. And then again in half so this tip touches this tip. That is our third fold, and you can tell that you've done it right because you'll have 3 tips. So again, fold them half once, twice, 3 times. Fold them half once, twice, 3 times, and you should end up with 3 little triangles. Okay, now, as I pointed out, those 3 tips, you also have the gathered tip. You're going to cut that off each of these little triangles. So, cut off that gathered tip on each of them, and you can just recycle those little scraps of paper. On the part that's left, we're going to cut a petal shape or a semicircle. Some people make really fancy ones. You can, but we're not going to. We're just going to make a very simple semicircle. You can also draw it ahead of time and then cut what you've drawn, or you can eyeball it. It doesn't really matter. This craft is extremely forgiving. So if you cut it and you decide, oh, I didn't really like that shape, you can just trim it and make it nicer. You can discard these scraps, and when you unfold it, you will see that it makes a flower shape. Ta-da! Okay, so do that to the other 2 pieces. If I unfold it, you'll notice I'm like, oh, I don't really like that shape. That's not very petal-esque. I can just refold it and kind of make it a little deeper. Much better. Okay, so we have 3 flower shapes. 1, 2, 3. Out of each of these, we're going to cut out some segments. At this point, we don't want to throw away the segments. We're going to use them. In the first flower, we're going to cut out 1 segment, and we're going to cut along the folds. So we just cut out 1 segment. This one we're going to cut out 2 segments, not separately, but as one piece. So cut along this fold, cut along this fold, and you can see I have 2 pieces. And then this one, of course, is going to be 3. So I cut along this fold and this fold, 3 pieces. Keep the 3, 2, and 1 piece. We're going to set them aside for now. And then we're going to take these and we are going to curl the petals. So we can actually set our scissors aside. We won't need them anymore. And grab your needle or your toothpick or whatever skinny stick you have. And you are just going to basically use your thumb and your forefinger and just tightly wrap the tip of the petal around this little stick. As you can see, it kind of curls it. Another little tip that you don't have to do, if you notice how some of these folds are going up toward you and some of them are going down, if you were doing origami, this would be called a mountain fold going up and a valley fold going down. I like to make them all into valley folds away from me, because that way the flower will make more of a funnel shape. It'll naturally want to do what it's supposed to do. You don't have to, but it's a pro tip right there. All right. So this part, you just literally curl, curl, curl until you're done. If, let's say that for whatever reason, you do this step, you do the next step, you're ready to glue it all together, and you're like, oh no, it's not curly enough, you can recurl it later. So yeah, if it for some reason does not meet your standards for curliness, no fear. Okay, ta-da. As you can see, it's all very curly. Again, I'm going to make all the folds point the same direction. Outward. Whoop. Okay. So we curl it. Also, if you are ever in need of old books for crafts, the Flagstaff Public Library downtown always has free books. Right outside the children's section, they're books that, you know, old medical books that are extremely inaccurate, or just, you know, old paperbacks that are falling apart. You can just grab them and feel free to give them a happy home or turn them into beautiful art. So we're almost done. Okay, so all very curly, very beautiful. Grab your glue gun, or glue stick rather, glue stick. We are going to glue the edge pieces, the pieces next to the segment we chopped out. I'm going to overlap them. So I'm basically going to cover this petal in glue, and then I'm going to put the one next to it overlapping. So on the biggest piece, you should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 segments showing. Okay. On the next piece, again, we're going to overlap these two. Just cover it in glue. And if this happens, you can just overlap the curled parts as well. Okay, on the middle one, you should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 segments showing. And then you grab your littlest one. Well, not the littlest, but the one with 5 segments. Cover it in glue. Overlap them. So you end up with 1, 2, 3, 4 segments showing. And then you can just set them aside to dry. And I have lost my glue lid. Okay, now you are going to grab these 3 segments. These are trickier. They don't fold together as nicely as the other ones, but that's okay. They're still going to be beautiful. So we can curl them. Okay. Now, we're not going to cover the entire petal with glue because if we did that and then we overlapped them, it would just become a flat shape and we don't want it to be flat. So we're going to cover maybe, actually I'm going to flip it over, maybe half of this petal with glue. And then we're going to glue it, but, one sec. You'll notice that we still see 1, 2, 3 petals showing. So, I don't know if you can see that. We have 1 petal, 2 petals, 3 petals. And this one's kind of bending and kind of almost folding. That's okay. The middle of roses kind of does, the petals aren't as full. They're not as flowering, they're more folded together and smushed. So it's okay if our flower is also more folded together and smushed. And you can, again, you can kind of recurl at this point too if you feel the need. Okay, so close enough. Set that aside to dry. These ones are the trickiest. These ones do not tend to want to stay glued. And you can even use your little stick to kind of curl them so they kind of want to hopefully curl a little more than they naturally would. So again, I'm going to curl them a little before I glue them. So they are doing some weird folding things. That's okay. It'll still look nice. And I'm just going to put glue on the edge, kind of a lot of glue because again, these really want to pop open. So gluing the edge of the flower. I usually tend to use my pinky and kind of make a trumpet shape or a kind of a cone shape with the 2-petaled piece and just kind of hold it together. And you'll notice it's doing some funky things. These petals are folding. They're not being nice and cooperating, but it's okay. This is one of those things in paper crafts where you just say, let the paper do what it wants. It will look good in the end. And it really will because roses are organic. They're not perfectly symmetrical. They do fold and crease and all that. Again, you're going to want to hold it a little bit longer than regular because it is probably going to want to pop open. Also, if it refuses to stay glued, you can use your glue gun to keep it together right before the final step. But it actually looks okay. A little bit like a tiny little lily. Set that aside. This one, it's pretty much just going to turn into a tube. If you're extremely skilled, you can get it to curl so that this curled petal stays put and stays as a petal. I'm not that skilled. So I just put a little bit of glue on one part of it and hope for the best. Kind of curl it together. If you want to curl it beforehand using your stick, you totally can. Oop. I actually might do what it's supposed to do. Oh, maybe it is. All right. This is a miracle. I'm normally not that talented. So, but yeah, as you can see on this one, the middle part is literally just a tube of paper. If you're extremely lucky, it can turn into a little flower-shaped curl. So, again, you guys gotta kind of practice. I made, I don't know, 6 or 7 of these, so maybe I'm getting better at it. Okay, now you should have 6 pieces of a rose, and hopefully all the glue is dry, and hopefully nothing is popping out. And if it is popping out, that's okay. That's what this is for. So you want to grab your glue gun. And before you glue anything else, again, this is your last chance to curl any of these petals if you want to. Technically, it's not your last chance. Technically, you can curl it when it's all put together as one rose, but it's a little trickier to do that. So, obviously, the little one goes inside the bigger one, bigger, 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 like a Russian nesting doll. We're going to start with the biggest one. So the 5-segment one is going to go in the 6-segment one. You're going to want to put a little bit of glue around the bottom of it, the 5 one, and then just kind of nestle it in there. And here's also your chance where if you ever decide like, oh, I don't like the orientation of those petals exactly the way they are, now's your chance to change them, to switch it around before the glue dries. Okay. And then you're going to take it and do the same thing to the 4 one. Just put the glue around the bottom. And, okay. Okay, and if you can tell, you could do a stem if you wanted to, put it through the bottom, although these shapes are probably going to fill in most of that hole. Okay. This is the middle one, just kind of seeing where I want it to go beforehand. Okay. Okay. I will also say, sometimes I've noticed that the 2-segment piece and the 1-segment piece will stick out kind of far. Like if you turn this sideways and you put this piece in, sometimes it sticks out really far. If it does and you don't like how far it sticks out, you can actually chop the bottom off and it will stick in closer. But that's kind of a, you know, if it's your thing, if it's not, I'm going to call it good. Okay, so you can see it's kind of turning into that curling in the middle that you would see in a rose. Okay, and again, I'm going to see if this is going to stick out. It doesn't look like it is. I'm just going to just go in the middle. And of course, if you've ever used a glue gun, you know that you'll have all these little glue stickies. You can just pull them off at the end. And there you have it, a beautiful rose. So again, you can play around, you can practice. It looks super nice for not that much effort. And you know, you could give a Valentine bouquet to somebody of paper roses. So if you want to share your roses with us, we would love to see them. You can tag us at FlagLib on Twitter or Facebook. You can also tag us at Flagstaff Library on Instagram. But until then, we hope to see you in the library. Happy crafting!